Good evening and welcome to Channel 17's continuing election coverage. You thought that it was over in March, but it's not, because Essex Junction and the Essex Westford School District still have some decisions to be made by you. So we are speaking today with two candidates for the Essex Westford School District, and that is Joanne Jewell and Todd Odit, and they are both new candidates. Neither of them are incumbents. And this is a position that has one seat that's open. So you will be voting on what day is the election?
April 9th.
April 9th, that's what
Tuesday.
I thought. Coming up April 9th. And if you have questions tonight, this is the 5th of April, you can give us a call at 862-3966. We'd love to hear from you. So without further ado, welcome both of you. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. Todd, why don't we start with you? Why are you running and what qualifies you for the school board?
Sure. Thank you for the question. My interest in the school board really goes back 2 years when the districts merged and there was the promise of transportation services to the village. And the first year of the merger, that didn't happen. It was announced quite late. And being an active parent in the community, I heard a lot of comments from the parents. I was concerned about that. And then, so as the last summer happened and the school year was approaching, I was concerned, is this going to happen? I started reaching out to Brian, the COO of the school district, had a meeting with him. What are we doing to make sure this is going to happen? I started attending board meetings. I've probably been to 15 or 20 board meetings since June. Originally, just trying to advocate for the parents I was listening to who didn't have the time to attend the meetings for that service in the village. As I attended those meetings, I realized that out of that group of 10, I felt I had a unique set of skills that I could bring to the board. I'm not an education policy wonk at all, but I've been involved in public administration and public policy my entire professional career, so I thought I could bring my expertise and experience in working with the board, being an administrator, public policy advocacy to the board. I thought it was something that could fill a role, and I saw that need on the board, so I decided, why not help out? If I'm going to be in the crowd, participating in meetings as a parent, why not have the backing of the voters and their voice to sit on the board and have more of an impact?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Joanne.
Why do I want to run? I am very invested in education. My professional background as a CPA and investigator leads me to listen with my eyes and my ears, and I think it's very important that we give our students the best education possible. As far as the busing situation, my kids actually live in the Junction too. That was, I think, the take on that was, I wish we would have gone with a proactive versus a reactive, meaning not change the schedules until we had the buses in place. But then it's the supply and demand thing. I don't think it was within their control that they didn't have the people to fill the buses, but the schedule changed. So that's a very tough position that they were put in. But I know it's very disconcerting when our taxes, $700,000 was left over from the busing situation. But back to my personal, what would make me a good member of the school board is, I'm a CPA by trade. I know numbers. I do tax accounting, but I also do understand fund accounting and can ask the question and ask the questions that need to, be asked and do due diligence to, make sure that we're making those good choices for, the society with the kids in general.
And what are the top 3 issues that you would work on?
I think I definitely would work on special education. That I think is very, very important. There is a, obviously with Act 46, they're changing the way, the funding stream is. I think there's a missing piece in that for Essex specifically, is there's a federal law, it's called Child Fine. So as you know, all the states get money from the federal government for some programs for education. Child Fine is a federal law where the schools have to identify, they have to evaluate kids in need. Essex displays that on their policy handbook different than a lot of other schools do. Colchester does it differently, as well as Williston. So it's a child-find, meaning the school has to do it. And the way that Essex read it, it says the parents are first and the children are second. Now I know we spend a lot of money on special education, 50% of the general education goes to special education. I think there's a number of kids that are not being identified. So to me, that's very, very important.
Okay.
Because I know they're talking about, is my time up?
No, you got another minute.
Okay, so one of the big reports was DMG. They did a report, and the teachers were talking about that they deal with behaviors all day long. Well, I think there was perhaps a group of kids that are not getting identified as needs, and if those kids' needs were met at an early age, it would be, you know, those behaviors would be corrected, as well as those kids would be more productive later in life.
Do you have any other issues besides special ed?
I think a return on investment, as far as I want to incentivize teachers that want to do more. Right now, how it's in place is they're paid on basis of their education and courses that they take in addition to that. I think there's teachers that want to do more. So there's teachers that want to do more if they want to, you know, if it's whatever they want to do. Like, for example, there's people that want to do robotics, there's people that want to do all kinds of different clubs, or there could be all kinds of different incentives. Obviously, working with the teachers and the union to make that something that's worthwhile, because the teachers are our best investment.
Okay, thank you very much. Todd, what are your top 3 issues? And you've named the school transportation as one. But
Transportation is one. So I would like to find an equitable resolution to that. Within the resources that are available, we need to find a resolution that treats everyone equitably. I'm also concerned or interested in capital planning and budgeting. I think by bringing together a huge amount of schools and the amount of capital resources we have, that going forward, trying to figure out how we're going to divvy up the funds within the district to those capital improvements is going to be a challenge. I think part of that stems from the governance structure that was set up, which I think manifested itself in the transportation debate by creating a board that represents portions of the district. It's going to be interesting to see how we decide which schools are improved and when. Like I said, that I think showed up in the transportation discussion, where we had, 6 out of the 10 board members had transportation. And I didn't see a lot of leadership among those individuals to sort of advocate for what was in the best interest of the district as a whole, which left just the minority 4 members of the village trying to advocate for that. And when you have 4 against 6, obviously that you're not going to get very far. I'd also like to work on board and administration communication. From what I saw, it seemed that the board weren't always prepared well in advance for their meetings. They didn't always have the meeting materials enough in advance of a meeting to be able to understand it, read it, and formulate questions. I think that's highly important that board members have that ability to digest material before a board meeting, as opposed to getting it at the meeting and then trying to react at the time. So
got it. All right. Why don't you tell us about your view of how consolidation of this school district has worked, and do you think that it has been beneficial for the region?
Okay. I think part of my last question it goes to that, but frankly, I think it's too early to tell. Again, my biggest concern is the way the district was set up, and is our board governance structure going to serve the interests of the district as a whole going forward.
So you're concerned about representation? I'm
concerned about representation. It would have been interesting to see if we had some at-large members on the board, how the transportation discussion would have went. I'm also concerned about the number of students we now have and the capital facilities we've had. There's been a few comments at some board meetings I've heard where, well, we have a lot of students now. I don't think that should be an excuse. We knew going in how many students we were going to have, and we need to serve them all equitably and give them the same resources. So hopefully it works, maybe it doesn't, but it's too early for me to judge whether or not it's going to work and whether it's successful.
Thank you. Joanne?
I really haven't seen much of a change. You know, for example, on a smaller scale, we carpool, a soccer carpool with a young gentleman that goes to Essex Middle School, and he's always talking about all the field trips he goes to. Well, my kids go to ADL, and they don't go to those field trips at all. So we still hear all the stuff EMS does. That's on a small scale. On the larger scale, I know that they talked about, you know, there's savings as far as administration, so there's not duplication of effort. So that is some savings. There is also, I know ADL has an assistant principal. EMS doesn't have one. EES has, you know, that size of the school is the same size as Hiawatha and Summit combined. So those both schools are getting an assistant principal, or I guess an SEL. I'm not sure, you know, social emotional learning. So I don't know if they're the same title. So I think that's important, but I haven't seen that much difference. And I know I looked at that DMG report that was done as far as Essex is one of the test cases for special ed, and they talked about, you know, some of the programs that are run at Summit, some of the programs that are running ES, and they're not the same. So I think one of the things is to take the best practices and do it district-wide. So if we're giving those training to the teachers, it's all the same training. So I think they're still maybe running separately, even though we're under one umbrella.
All right. So what do you think of Vermont's approach to funding education? And what direction would you give the legislators on what they should do differently?
I think actually they do a very good job on, you know, how it is funded. It's interesting watching that 65% of the population there, how they actually contribute to the income tax is through income, not their actual household rate. But stepping back as far as, I know, was it 97 or 98, that it's basically an equal playing field. It's no longer, you know, a Shelburne, which is a more affluent or has more dollars tax district, that they get more of the education. I think it's very good that it's a level playing field. I really do agree with that.
All right, very good. Todd, what do you believe about the education funding?
I think the goal is good, but I think the system is too complex. Most people have no idea how it works. You know, if I walked up to a person on the street and said, you know, what do you think about the town's common level of appraisal, or their coefficient of dispersion, or equalized pupil, or, you know, homestead rate? They would look at me like I was crazy. They think it was April Fool's Day. You know, you got to be making these things up. I think it needs to be more transparent. There's a large shift onto municipalities to actually make this funding system work. It's all based on, we have 246 towns, more or less, who are responsible for maintaining the ground list and assessing property values. A lot of the times, those people are elected lay people who are responsible for that. We have to collect the tax. We build the tax. A lot of times we get people in who don't understand why they're billed at the non-residential rate, or they didn't get their property adjustment, and we as local officials are left to try to explain what is really a state issue. It's an interesting hybrid of trying to do a property tax as well as making it, you know, an income tax with the income sensitivity. I'd be interested in seeing a real thorough look into making it a purely income-based tax for residents and leaving the property tax to non-residential. But like I said, I think the goal is good in trying to level the playing field, but I think the actual structure is too complicated, and most people don't understand how their spending decisions are impacted in their property tax.
So,
I have a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
There's actually a really good video on Vermont School Board that explains the whole thing. It's kind of an animated thing. It's really for people that wanted to to see that explained in layman's terms.
Yeah. Great. That's good to know because it is pretty complex.
It is, and when I saw it, I'm like, wow, oh, this is really, it's very, very broken down into
ways people can understand. So Todd, why don't we just talk about your view of whether the district is effectively addressing and funding the opportunity gap, and that is the difference between the disparity in access to quality education and the resources needed for all children to be academically successful.
Sure. First I want to say, when I don't really understand something, I'll be the first to admit that I don't know. Not having served on the school board before, I'm not really I don't have a good understanding of where they are spending their dollars. So I don't really feel qualified or have enough information to comment on that specifically, but in my opinion, I think where we could make a really good investment is in preschool. My understanding, with Act 166, the state funds 10 hours of what some would consider quality preschool education for students. I don't think that's frankly enough. My wife and I were fortunate to be able to send our 2 kids to NACE accredited preschools. As soon as they turned 3, we received, that subsidy from the state to send them there. We didn't need it. I would like to see the board look into, are there ways the district can do more? Can we do more than what the bare minimum of the state is? And is the community interested in spending that? Because it would come out of local dollars, is my understanding. It wouldn't be supported by the state. But I think if the earlier we can start educating our kids and getting them into an environment where they're supported and they have quality instruction, I think that will pay dividends in the long run. So that's one thing I would be interesting if I get elected to the board to say, is there something we can do more? And I think it would be around preschool education.
Thank you. So Joanne, you talked a little bit about that investing on the front end when you were talking about special education. How do you think the district is using its funding to address this opportunity gap?
I think, once again, looking at that DMG report, there is some disparity on how, the town and the junction does it. And not to pit one against each other, but one appears to have more, this is done, more systematical approach. I'm 110% agreement with Todd. It's got to be proactive, not reactive. I think perhaps some of your discipline problems, the teachers in that DMG report say, I deal with behaviors all day long. Well, I think a big part of that, and studies have shown, if the kid is not getting it for whatever reason, the social, emotional part, it's important that we address that early on. It just reaps so many, it cuts off the problems hopefully at the pass. There's so many kids, they talk about that only 50% of the kids are reading at level in 3rd grade. We have to do better than that. We just have to. I think it just, those are the kids that are coming out at the end, and that perhaps some of the children might be, for whatever reason, on the government fisc. But if we if we're proactive and do stuff at an early age, those kids are going to go into, they're going to just feel better about themselves because they're keeping up with their peers.
Thank you. I just want to remind folks, if you want to give us a call at 862-3966, we'd love to hear from you. We're speaking with the candidates for the Essex Westford School District. The election is April 9th. Unconscious racial bias, how do you think the district is working towards addressing this issue? Joanne.
I think the school actually does a very, very good job. From what I'm seeing, I'm not in every, I know Todd was saying that he attends a lot of the board meetings. I actually watch them after the fact. And I think, the Black Lives Matter, I think, it appears that at the high school they're very open. They have a lot of groups and communities. I have twins at the middle school, and they have friends, a wide diversity of friends, from on their basketball teams to, all kinds of different cultures. And I just think it's amazing that, I'm not in a position sitting in their chair and seeing what they feel like, but everything that I've seen, it's integrated, you know, they all come together as peers, friends, one another, and so I think the district does a very good job with that.
Okay, thank you. Todd, your view on unconscious racial bias and how it's handled in the district?
Sure. I was pleasantly surprised when my third grader came home from Summit Street School and said, we have this opportunity to pick a subject dealing with bias. That wasn't his exact term, but, and he chose racism. And I was floored by that. I was excited by that. I remember as being a third grader, that's not anything we ever discussed. And we had a really interesting conversation about that. Could the school do more? Of course. You know, I think, or the district, you know, I think every student should be able to go to school and feel comfortable, and there not be any concerns about any bias in the curriculum, and that they have an opportunity to learn throughout their education. It's not just a third grade unit and then you move on. I think it's something that should be continuous. And I was really interested to read about, I believe it's Act Number 1 of the 2019 session that Governor Phil Scott just signed. And if I can get it correctly, I think it was the Ethnic and Social Equity Standards Study Committee that is designed to, the whole purpose of which is to create a study committee of a lot of stakeholders to come up. Can we look at implementing state education standards to deal with biases, not just racial, but you know, social. And there was a lot of good information in there. I read that bill today, and I think that, you know, before that study is finished, that's something that the district could look at and say, here are the criteria that were laid out for this study committee, and why not get a head start and start looking at these things and seeing what we can do. You know, I think a large part of it is incorporating that continual learning into the teachers and saying, you know, this isn't just, you know, you've attended one training, you know, this is going to be a subject that you should continue with your entire career from beginning to end.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to the question of personal learning plans. This is a 2020 expectation that the students are meant to graduate with these learning plans. So what is needed to be done to get the school district and the stakeholders on board with this state mandate? Todd.
Sure. Well, my daughter has told me that if it didn't take away from her wellness block, she'd be much more interested. But I think that speaks volumes in that students need to understand what it's for, what the purpose is. At the board meeting I attended on Tuesday, there was an hour-long presentation on what the school was doing on PLPs. And the focus of that were these selective student forums that they had in each school. And the results of that were pretty amazing. It seemed like it really got the kids engaged. And I asked at that meeting, well, can we do this for every student? Why shouldn't every student have this opportunity? And you know, the response was, well, we have a lot of students, but then, you know, a little talk through, it's like, well, it doesn't need to be, you know, the two individuals who led these doing them for everybody. Perhaps we can enable students to lead some of these. Maybe we can empower teachers to lead some of these. I think from what I heard, across the district, it varies the time that students are allowed to work on their PLPs. You know, perhaps we can bring in, ask the students, you know, what are some of the professions, or what would you aspire to do, and bring in some of those people and come up with, have them develop sort of their PLP. If, you know, if someone's an airline pilot, you know, if I was a sixth grader, this is sort of what my PLP would look like, and demonstrate to them how that works. In terms of parents, I think it would be really good to develop some videos. When, you know, the last presidential election, we saw a lot of these short 1-2 minute videos explaining the electoral college. Maybe we can do something like that for parents so that they can digest that information in short snips at their leisure to kind of get them on board and educate them as to what they are.
Thank you so much. Joanne, what's your view on PLPs and integrating this? What needs to be done?
I think it's very important. My twins will graduate in 2023. I spoke a great deal to them. Like I said, I have a son that's a sophomore right now at UVM, an engineering major, and as we said, you need to be take a wide variety of courses so that you don't limit yourself when you get in college. So that's a big discussion in our house, you know, the fact that he's already been on the other end of that. But I think it's important for people that don't have that, you know, for example, a big age gap, so that we know what you need to do. So my daughter, who's on this member of the 8th grade board, they had some kids come from the high school and speak to them about that. You know, we just said you need to take it seriously. I really don't know, you know, what they have done in the classroom, but I know they didn't seem like they took it as seriously. I said, our point of view is you need to take it seriously so that your teachers are taking it seriously, so somebody's going to have an educated discussion with you. So I know my 8th graders haven't really gone on board, even though we've discussed it, but I think we need to do more around it to have them engaged in it.
Okay. We have time for 1 minute closing comments. So Joanne, Jewell, would you like to give us a 1 minute closing comment?
Absolutely. If elected, you know, I would like to serve all the constituents. As I said, you know, special ed is one of the things that I think that we need to help those students as well. As a CPA, you know, I'll dig into the due diligence. I work well as a team. I work well as an individual, and to listen to, you know, the taxpayers and whatnot to support the district.
Very good. Thank you so much. Todd, Odit, closing comment.
Sure. If given the opportunity, I really look forward to representing the village, although I don't like divvying up the unified district into political areas. You know, that's where we are. I feel I'm very skilled at advocating. I'm willing to listen. I don't come in with any agendas, anything that I feel like I need to achieve. I need to spend a lot of time learning and understanding what the board is working on, and I look forward to the opportunity. I'm happy to do it, and I feel like I have the skills and experience to be an effective representative of the village of Essex Junction.
On the school district.
On the school district,
On the
yeah.
Essex Westford
Yes.
School District. All right, well, I want to thank you both so much for your willingness to serve. It's never easy to sit on a forum and say what you think and put your ideas out there to the public. So I really appreciate that
Thank you for the time.
taken the time to do it. And I just want to remind folks, April 9th is election day for the junction, and also that will have an impact on the Essex Westford School District, because there will be a vote on those representatives. And the two here today are Joanne, Jewell, and Todd Odit. So don't forget to vote, and thanks so much for watching.